So you both come from industry backgrounds, actually. So do you think it's important for a coach to understand the industry?
You can come to coaching, I think, from a number of places. You can come through the psychological route. You can come through the sports route. You can come through business. And we particularly believe that if you've been in the shoes of the people you're coaching, that gives you an advantage. You know what it's like to lead people, to make acquisitions, to turn businesses around, to face the challenges that leaders are facing. And I think that's important. To have that experience and to have that skill and knowledge. Not that as a coach you would want to impose that knowledge, but just understanding it, just knowing what it's like, I think is really important from my perspective, certainly. Yeah.
So is that sort of a sympathy factor, you would say, that is important?
I think it's two things. I think it's a sympathy factor, so an empathy factor for sure. It's also a credibility factor. So your clients will trust you more because you've been there, because you've done that. You're not a theorist saying, I think this would be a good thing to do. We're exploring ideas and concepts together and trying to find what the best solution is for that person. But we understand making those decisions, if you like, I think.
I guess you speak their language and you understand the problems that they're having, and so you can ask very different questions probably, and see it from that sort of point of view. How important is it about building up those relationships again with the client and the business understanding, and where do you draw the line?
That's an interesting question, because obviously for most clients, as Frans alluded to, they take comfort from the fact that we come from a commercial background. So they make these assumptions, we have some good understanding, and this will certainly benefit the conversations that we're having. Now that flies slightly against the grain of our coaching methodology and approach, which is you're the subject matter expert. We're just running a process and facilitating conversations that are going to be helpful and useful for you. That said, it certainly gives them more comfort. I think the credibility factor is there. They have a belief and a feeling that the relationship and building rapport happens much quicker and easier because we understand their language. We've been in their shoes to some extent. So it certainly adds value, but I don't think from our perspective that we rely on that and be very overt and clear about that. But it certainly gives them some comfort in terms of how quickly we can build that relationship and develop the understanding of what they're going through and perhaps what some of the pain is that they're dealing with at that particular moment in time.
To build on that, for me, trust is paramount in the coaching relationship. So irrespective of your experience, irrespective of your background, if there isn't chemistry and the person doesn't trust you, they won't do the work that they need to do. So that you talked about relationship is absolutely critical. Without that as a foundation. So we're very clear about confidentiality when we coach people on a one-to-one basis, that nothing happens outside, that we don't report back to the organization. And in fact, we walked away from assignments where they insist that we share some of the insights that we're getting from the people we're coaching, and we just won't do that work because it is about a trusted relationship between the two of us, and we're exploring how you're going to do what you want to do, achieve what you want to achieve, and get better at what you're up to. And if that trusting relationship isn't in place, then it won't work. So it's a critical part of this.
So the relationship is between the individual, but not the employee? Or is the client?
The client's involved. Client's involved by setting what the requirements are, what we're trying to achieve, what the growth areas might be for this individual. They'll be involved in that, but the conversations are highly confidential. And there's nothing that I would share with anybody else. There's a couple of exceptions. One is if the person was stealing from the organization, I'd have to raise that. And we contract for that. So we contract for that right up front. If we believe they're a danger to themselves or others, we'll say, okay, that we need to escalate. So those are the two areas that we would probably exclude from confidentiality. But no one can ask me, well, what did he say today? What was the subject of the conversation? Because I just wouldn't answer it. So you need to talk to them, not to us. If you think about what leaders get up to, they will lead. so provide strategy and direction, vision for the organization. They will have to manage the outputs and operationalize what it is that it needs to happen. There'll be times when they'll need to consult. There'll be times when they'll need to teach. There'll be times they'll need to mentor, and there'll be times that they need to coach. And so there are lots of things that we need to be up to as leaders. So having the coaching as part of that, an extension of that leadership mix, is really important, because that's what's going to get people really engaged in what you're up to. You can do all of the other things, but they typically are an impart skill. Coaching is an elicitation skill. It's a fundamental shift in mindset. So I can tell you what I think as a consultant. I can tell you what I think as a mentor. I can tell you what I think if I'm teaching you something, and I can manage the outputs because I'm going to tell you what needs to happen, and I can create a vision and a direction as a leader, and I'll tell you what that is. I'll probably elicit from the board around me and the senior people around me, but largely I'm setting direction. Coaching is, what do you think? What's on your mind? What would you like to achieve? How, if we're trying to achieve this, how would you go about it? And it's an elicitation exercise, which is fundamentally different. So it takes that shift in mindset for that to happen.